A Second Chance at Love. Previous episodes are available in playlist, a link is given in the video description. Episode 58. Did I say anything wrong? I'm more than happy to help pick Archie and Benny up and look after them if you can't make it. Do you not want my help? Lucian replied in the most matter-of-fact tone possible. He then eyed Roxanne from head to toe as he continued, "If you don't want me to do that, I can have Kaden." Roxanne knew just how persistent he could get, so she quickly cut him off. "All right, I'll pick Essie up if you're too busy." Satisfied with her answer, Lucian nodded slowly in response. Looking at the time on her watch, Roxanne said, "Anyway, I need to get to work now. See you later in the evening." She was worried about the research institute, as it had been without a leader for 2 days straight. Roxanne was about to leave when Lucian called out to her with a displeased frown, "That's it? Are you just going to leave like that?" She paused in her tracks and let out a helpless sigh in response. "Lucian seemed to have changed completely ever since I agreed to let him court me. For some reason, I just can't bring myself to say no to him." Roxanne turned around and asked, "What else do you want me to do?" Before she even realized what was going on, Lucian had walked up to her and given her a quick peck on the lips. "That's more like it." Lucian gently rubbed her lips as he continued with a mysterious look in his eyes, "Go on, then." It took Roxanne a good few seconds to come back to her senses. Her face burned bright red when she realized he had kissed her in front of a kindergarten. She was about to warn him not to kiss her in public again, but she held her tongue as she didn't want him to think there would be a next time. "What is it?" Lucian asked in confusion. "Please mind your behavior." Roxanne snapped at him and stormed off. Although there weren't a lot of people around when Lucian kissed her, Roxanne refused to stick around in case someone had seen it. Lucian followed behind her as the two made their way toward their respective cars. Roxanne started her car and was about to drive to the research institute, but the engine failed a few seconds after she started it up. With a frown on her face, she tried starting it a few more times, but to no avail. She gave up on driving and decided to hail a cab instead. As Lucian had yet to leave, he saw her get out of the car and quickly followed suit. "What's wrong? I thought you were going to the research institute." "My car broke down. It has been breaking down often ever since it crashed into a tree the other day. I'll take a cab there." "You can head on over to your office," Roxanne replied in frustration. She was about to walk past Lucian and hail a passing cab from the street when Lucian said, "Let me take a look at your car. It might be something that I can easily fix." Feeling a little relieved, Roxanne turned around and walked back to her car with Lucian. Unfortunately, Lucian could not find anything wrong with her car even after inspecting it thoroughly. "I think you need to have a mechanic repair it for you." "All right. I'll take a cab there myself. Thanks for trying to help." "Why would you choose a difficult option when a much easier one is right in front of you?" Lucian asked. Roxanne paused in her tracks and stared at him in confusion. "I'm in no rush. How about I give you a ride instead?" Lucian continued with an eyebrow arched while getting out of her car. Roxanne was a little hesitant when she heard that. It would be difficult to get a cab at this hour, so Lucian sending me to work would make things a lot easier. But I'm not used to being so close to him just yet, nor am I able to shamelessly accept his help." As though he had read her mind, Lucian added, "I don't mind charging you a fare if you're that particular about troubling me." Roxanne tensed up, as she knew Lucian meant something else when he said that. Sure enough, Lucian continued by saying, "I just need you to go somewhere with me." "Where to?" Roxanne asked instinctively. Instead of answering her question, Lucian simply opened the door to the passenger seat and motioned for her to get in. As the two of them had been standing around for quite some time, they were starting to attract the attention of the people nearby. Since it was getting late, Roxanne got into the car after a brief moment of hesitation. Lucian then made his way to the driver's seat and slowly drove out of there. Caden let out a huge sigh as he watched Lucian's car disappear into the distance. Ugh! It sure isn't easy being Mr. Farwell's assistant. Not only did I have to suppress my guilt and sabotage Ms. Jarvis' car in public, but now, I also have to clean up the mess myself and get her car towed to a repair shop." After making a phone call, Caden pressed his palms together and prayed that Roxanne wouldn't hold him accountable if she found out about it in the future. "I'm just carrying out the orders given by Mr. Farwell, so she should go after him instead." Meanwhile, a huge commotion broke out in the classroom when Pippa brought the three kids inside. "Essie! It really is her!" All the other kids squealed in excitement as they rushed forward and surrounded the three. One of them had mentioned earlier that he had seen Estella at the front gate, but they didn't believe him at the time. It wasn't until they saw Estella enter the classroom that they finally believed it. They didn't really like Estella before, as she refused to speak to them, which led them to believe she didn't like them. As Estella gradually opened up with the help of Archie and Benny, however, the kids slowly warmed up to her. Eventually, they liked her so much that they actually missed her while she was gone. Having been treated coldly while attending classes at the other kindergarten, Estella wasn't used to receiving such a warm welcome all of a sudden. She decided to turn toward Archie and Benny for help, only to realize they had blended into the crowd. As the kids all took turns giving Estella hugs, one of the boys got so excited that he kissed her on the cheek. Archie and Benny leaped to their feet and yelled angrily, "Hey! Boys aren't allowed to kiss her! Hugs only!" Estella was still stunned by the sudden kiss, but she instinctively nodded when she heard them defending her. The boy then walked up to her and apologized, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to kiss you. I just..." After Estella snapped out of her dazed state, her lips curled into a smile when she saw the sincere looks on their faces. "It's okay. I've missed you guys too." At that, the kids smothered her with hugs again. Pippa chuckled and shook her head when she saw how excited the kids were. They are rarely this happy, so why not let them have some fun? She flashed a smile and watched them from the side, lest they get into any accidents. Another teaching assistant from the same class approached her and whispered, "Ms. Ward, how is Mr. Farwell related to Archie and Benny's mother?" Pippa froze in surprise. She recalled Lucian's words earlier and how Estella had addressed Roxanne this morning. It was evident that there was more to their relationship than either of them was letting on, although they had not been explicit about it. In the event that a member of the Farwell family wished to pick up Estella, Lucian would need to be notified by phone, whereas Roxanne could collect her without prior authorization. It could be said that Roxanne was much more important to Lucian than his family. However, she wasn't sure if they were ready to go public with their relationship. Pippa gave the teaching assistant a half-smile instead of answering her question. The teaching assistant continued, "I saw Mr. Farwell and Ms. Jarvis doing that through the window earlier." Pippa shot her a baffled look. The teaching assistant made a kissing gesture with her hands. Her gesture elicited a surprised look in Pippa's eyes. Pippa knew they were dating, but it was still shocking to learn that they had kissed at the kindergarten entrance. "What about Mr. Farwell and Ms. Pearson's engagement?" the teaching assistant asked curiously. Fearing that she might dwell on the matter, Pippa promptly clarified, "I suppose they broke up." She wasn't sure about it, but Lucian had most probably broken up with Aubrey judging from how he treated her. "I previously thought Mr. Farwell and Ms. Pearson didn't seem like a real couple. Ms. Pearson was so rude to us, remember? She doesn't deserve to be with Mr. Farwell." The teaching assistant was pretty upset with Aubrey. After learning that Lucian and Aubrey were no longer together, she promptly vented her frustrations. "I don't think Essie likes Aubrey, too. Did she do something to Essie behind Mr. Farwell's back?" They both turned to look at Estella. A long while later, the teaching assistant piped up, "Actually, Essie resembles Ms. Jarvis, doesn't she? She adores Ms. Jarvis. If I didn't know the truth, I'd have assumed she's Ms. Jarvis' daughter." Pippa observed Estella for a while and nodded in agreement. However, Estella was Lucian's daughter, and Roxanne had her own children. Naturally, they weren't related to each other by blood. Pippa sighed softly. "I wish that's true. That way, Essie wouldn't have refused to talk for years." When Estella started attending kindergarten, Pippa had concerns about her well-being. Fortunately, Roxanne appeared in the little girl's life. The teaching assistant agreed, "Yes. Perhaps fate brought Ms. Jarvis to Essie so she could be her savior. Look how happy Essie is now." Their hearts melted at the adorable sight of Estella playing with her friends. Meanwhile, in Lucian's car, Roxanne couldn't help but glance at him through the rearview mirror. 6 years ago, she wouldn't miss the chance to spend time with Lucian. She would always stare at his face intently, hoping he could spare a glance at her. It had never happened. Now, she finally got the chance to stare at him whenever she wanted. All the while, she had thought her feelings for Lucian had faded over time. Never in her wildest dreams did she expect to still be deeply and wildly in love with Lucian. "How was it? Are you satisfied?" Lucian suddenly turned to look at her. Roxanne stiffened and blurted out, "Not bad." Hearing that, Lucian chuckled in amusement. Roxanne belatedly regained her composure and realized what she had just said. Her cheeks flushed a crimson red immediately. Lucian wasn't about to push her too much. Sensing her anxiety, he changed the topic. "Thanks to you and the boys, Essie is doing so much better now." Roxanne relaxed subconsciously when she heard Estella's name. Her eyes softened as she said, "I didn't do anything. Essie is shy, so we should make an effort to befriend her. I should be grateful that she's willing to open her heart to me." There was nothing more moving than being trusted by a young girl. They chatted about Estella's change throughout the journey. Roxanne's gaze soon drifted to the scenery outside the car window. She was taken aback by the unfamiliarity of her surroundings. Glancing at her watch, she realized they should have arrived at the research institute from the kindergarten ages ago. "Are you sure you're going the right way?" she asked quickly, her voice full of concern. "This isn't the route to the research institute." Lucian didn't make a U-turn. Instead, he asked calmly, "Didn't you agree to go someplace with me?" Roxanne was reminded of the fair Lucian had mentioned earlier. Furrowing her brows, she protested, "You didn't say that we're heading there now. I was planning on heading back to the research institute." Knowing what she was thinking, Lucian drawled, "You haven't visited the research institute in a while, but it's still functioning efficiently, right? This shows that the institute can operate smoothly even when you're not present. You needn't feel obligated to return today." Roxanne could not refute his words. Indeed, the research institute had been doing well despite her and Colby's absence. After accepting a project, the researchers simply had to conduct their research as planned. In normal circumstances, nothing unexpected would occur. She sighed inwardly and caved in. "Where are we going now?" "Since you returned to the country, you've been occupied with work and looking after Archie and Benny. You can't be stressed all the time. I'll take you to a place where you can unwind." Roxanne instinctively wanted to respond that she didn't feel stressed at all. However, it was as though Lucian had expected her response, as he added, "I've been pretty busy with work at Farwell Group as well. I also had to investigate Colby's background. It's pretty exhausting, so I'd like to take a break." Roxanne swallowed the words on the tip of her tongue. If Lucian was merely concerned about her, she would think it was unnecessary to drive to some place just to relax. However, Lucian had used himself as an excuse, hinting to Roxanne that he was too busy investigating something. This left Roxanne feeling guilty, and she felt that it was her responsibility to unwind with him. Not long after, the car rolled to a stop before a beach. Roxanne felt her heart relax at the sight of the vast ocean. It had been some time since she had last come to the beach. 6 years ago, before their separation, she would visit the beach alone to find solace whenever Lucian hurt her feelings. After giving birth to Archie and Benny, Roxanne would relax by spending time playing with them. Every time she spent time playing with the children, she would eventually feel rejuvenated. To her surprise, she felt the same way today at the sight of the endless sea before her. "I recall you used to come to the beach frequently in the past." Lucian's voice echoed in her ear as he reminisced about old times. "After you left, I'd also come to the beach whenever I felt tired. It was a great feeling." With that, he clasped her hand and led her to the beach. It was a weekday, so there was no one in sight. Roxanne hesitated briefly and allowed him to lead her to the beach. They strolled along the beach while chatting about the events that had occurred over the past 6 years. Roxanne shared the details of her life over the past 6 years with Lucian, excluding information about Archie and Benny. This was the first time she had spoken about it with such composure. Lucian listened to her story quietly as guilt and anguish flashed across his eyes. The more Roxanne talked, the more relaxed she felt. Eventually, she took off her shoes and strolled along the shoreline without them. Seeing that, Lucian couldn't help but recall how she had gotten hurt previously. "It was dark that night. I didn't see clearly and got hurt. This time, I'll be careful," Roxanne said cheerfully. Right after she spoke, she spotted the sharp edge of a blue shell peeking out of the sand. Roxanne's face lit up with excitement as she exclaimed, "Oh, how wonderful! The ocean never ceases to amaze me with its surprises." She dug the shell out and showed it to Lucian. Lucian stared at her smile. "It's gorgeous." Roxanne was engrossed in admiring the shell and didn't notice his pointed look. She felt proud to hear him agree with her. Something occurred to Lucian right then, and he lowered his head to search the beach. Roxanne looked up to see him furrowing his brows as he searched for something as though confronting a formidable enemy. Curiosity swelled within her. "What are you looking for?" Lucian replied honestly, "Shells. You seem to adore them, so I was thinking of collecting a few shells to make a bracelet for you." Surprise flashed across Roxanne's eyes. They had known each other for some time, but it was the first time Lucian had offered to make something for her. He was a well-respected CEO, yet he thought of making a bracelet for her just like a high school student. Roxanne would be lying if she said she wasn't shocked to hear that. "Since you didn't appreciate the flowers I gave you before, I wonder if my handmade bracelet will be more to your liking," Lucian quipped. Roxanne was touched, but in the end, she merely smiled and said, "How childish of you." Lucian didn't feel guilty at all. He accepted her compliment and started searching for shells on the beach. Roxanne hesitated for a while before joining him in his search. As they combed the beach for shells, they playfully joked with each other like a pair of school children. At the sight of a lovely seashell in the distance, Roxanne immediately made her way toward it without any hesitation. As soon as she crouched down to pick up the shell, the waves suddenly became rough and rushed toward her. Getting soaked was not what Roxanne had anticipated, but even with her disheveled appearance and her hair hanging limply behind her ears, she still looked remarkably beautiful. "Oh!" Roxanne was caught off guard by the wave, and it took her a few seconds to regain her composure. By the time she did, the shells she had gathered in her palm had been swept away by the water. She couldn't even locate the shell she had originally spotted and wanted to pick up. She felt both amused and helpless. It had been a while since her last visit to the beach, yet she got soaked by the seawater, causing her to lose all the shells she had collected. Lucian heard Roxanne gasp and recognized that she was close to the sea. He stood up and walked over to her. "Are you okay?" Roxanne wiped the seawater from her face and shook her head, letting out a remorseful sigh. "I'm okay, but my shells have been washed away." Her clothes were drenched and stuck to her body. As she moved, he could see her seductive curves clearly. Lucian stared at her and felt a rush of blood in his nether regions, as he had been living a celibate lifestyle for 6 years. However, he was more worried about her. In a low voice, he said, "Let's go back. We can come another day." He was afraid she'd catch a cold if they continued to stay there. Roxanne knew why he was concerned. Despite feeling disappointed, she nodded and walked to the shore. "Be careful." Lucian's brows furrowed as he hurried over to her in huge strides. Roxanne heard the waves crashing behind her, prompting her to quicken her pace. Unfortunately, her foot caught on a hidden rock, causing her to slip and fall backward. The wave rolled over and nearly swallowed Roxanne whole. Roxanne was taken by surprise when the waves crashed over her and threatened to engulf her. She desperately tried to stay afloat, flailing her arms and legs in a frantic attempt to regain her footing. When she was about to suffocate, a large pair of arms held her hand and pulled her up from the ocean. Roxanne spat out a mouthful of salty sea water and panted heavily. Lucian fixed his gaze intently on her, displaying a look of anxiety that she had never seen on him before. After the previous incident, he couldn't bear to see her in danger anymore. Roxanne finally regained her composure and felt remorseful for causing him to worry due to her negligence. "I'm sorry." Before she could finish, her lips were sealed. Lucian's sudden kiss was so passionate. It was as if he wanted to devour her whole. He released his grip on her hand, then encircled her waist, drawing her closer. Roxanne was still in a state of shock. Her body was stiff and her eyes turned as wide as saucers. "I might be wrong, but Lucian's hands seemed to be trembling." Sensing her distraction, Lucian frowned and forced her to open her mouth so he could deepen their kiss. Roxanne finally understood why he had initiated the kiss. Her eyelashes trembled as she closed her eyes and flung her arms around his neck. They stood among the crashing waves, lost in the passionate kiss, not caring whether someone else would show up suddenly to interrupt their intimate session. In the distance, a camera appeared briefly among the bushes, taking several snapshots of them before retreating back behind the foliage. Roxanne felt short of breath and pushed Lucian twice, signaling him to stop. Lucian reluctantly let go of her, his breath coming in heavy gasps. His eyes turned red as he struggled to keep his desire in check. "I'm sorry. You must have been worried about me," Roxanne said softly as she avoided his intrusive gaze awkwardly. Lucian said nothing and merely stared at her darkly. Suddenly, he bent down and swooped her up. Shocked, Roxanne instinctively clung to his neck, afraid she would fall to the ground. Her actions happened to play in Lucian's favor. The violence in his gaze faded a little as he strode to the shore. Roxanne's cheeks were flushed as she said, "Put me down. I can walk by myself now." She knew she had scared him. He scooped her up in his arms because he was fearful that something similar would happen once more. Ignoring her protests, Lucian carried her to his car and helped her settle into the passenger seat. He retrieved his suit jacket from the back seat and draped it over her shoulders before taking his place behind the wheel. Noticing he was still mad at her, Roxanne felt utterly helpless. "Didn't we come here to relax? That was just a tiny accident." Lucian's brows were still knitted together. Deep down, she let out a sigh and said coyly, "You promised to give me a handmade shell bracelet. Don't forget about it." Lucian turned over to look at her. "I won't go back on my word. I'll come back another day to find the shells. As for you," he trailed off and gazed at her darkly for a few moments. "Go back and get some rest. You don't want to catch a cold." Roxanne was relieved. She pursed her lips and gave him a smile. Lucian started the engine and drove away. At the same time, Corey emerged from the bushes and patted the leaves away from his body. He lowered his head to check the photos he had taken earlier. Corey was pleased to discover he was still a good photographer as the photos turned out nicely. He transferred the photos to his phone and picked a few to send to Aubrey. Aubrey had been in a daze these few days after getting rejected by Lucian. She didn't even step out of her bedroom. "Aubrey, come out and have something to eat. Perhaps there is still a chance to turn things around." "Lucian won't be that cruel," Gina coaxed outside. She couldn't bear to see her daughter torturing herself. Aubrey ignored her outright. Upon discovering that Lucian intended to annul their engagement, Frida had vanished without a trace, and Aubrey had not heard from her since. Similarly, Corey had disappeared after Roxanne's hospital discharge, leaving Aubrey clueless as to his whereabouts. None of them are reliable. Aubrey was simmering in anger when her phone lit up. Furious, she grabbed her phone to see who it was. It was a text sent by an unknown number. She clicked into it and saw a few photos of Roxanne and Lucian together that were obviously taken without their knowledge. In the photos, Lucian and Roxanne were sharing a passionate kiss in the sea before Lucian swept her up in his arms and carried her away from the waves. Aubrey grew increasingly disgusted and nearly broke her phone screen with her forceful grip. "You're nothing, Roxanne. The public has yet to be informed of the annulment of our engagement. How dare she do that in public? I can't let her get away with this." Gina heard the commotion outside and knocked on the door anxiously. "Aubrey, what happened? Open up." Aubrey did nothing to assure her mother and angrily typed a reply to the unknown number who sent her the photos. "Are you Corey?" She couldn't think of anyone else who could take photos of Lucian covertly and send them to her. She soon received a reply, "Just looks like you have been leading an uncomfortable life recently, Ms. Pearson." Aubrey gritted her teeth in fury. She quickly typed, "How dare you send these photos to me?" She had paid him handsomely, yet he had disappeared without a trace when she needed his help the most. Everything has been set in stone. I can't believe he's shameless enough to come to me now. Corey could imagine her clenching her jaw in fury, but he wasn't bothered at all. He sent her another text, "Of course. Who else will pay me other than you?" Back when Aubrey had asked him to help kill Roxanne, Corey knew that she was a mad woman. As soon as Roxanne was discharged from the hospital, Corey stopped contacting her and used the money she had given him to have fun in Marsingville. He had planned on earning more money there. Unfortunately, within a few days, his expectations were dashed, as he ended up losing all his money and accrued a hefty debt. Corey remembered Aubrey and decided to come back to scam more money from her. "Corey, consider these photos my gift to you. Ms. Pearson, if you wish, we can continue our collaboration. You know how capable I am, right?" A crazed look took over Aubrey's expression. She replied, "Collaboration? Sure. You want money, right? I have yet to change my mind about killing Roxanne that. If you agree, I can pay you any amount you want." As she remained stubborn, Corey became impatient and sent her photos of her poisoning the kids previously. Aubrey blanched in shock at the sight of the photos. She replied hastily, "What are these? Didn't you delete them?" She had spent 10 million on these photos and watched Corey delete them in front of her eyes. "Corey, delete? Why would I delete these valuable photos? Do you think 10 million can satisfy me? These photos are my cash cow." Aubrey trembled in rage and muttered, "Bastard! Die, all of you." Corey sent another text, "I didn't want to burn my bridges, but since you're stubborn, don't blame me for doing this. I'll be honest with you. I owe a huge gambling debt. If you won't help me repay my debt, I guess I'll have to ask for Mr. or Mrs. Farwell's help." He was threatening Aubrey and also mocking her for losing her position as the future Mrs. Farwell. Aubrey promptly lost control after reading the text. She threw her phone away without a second thought. Her phone crashed into the door with a thud before falling onto the carpet on the ground. Outside, Gina summoned a servant hastily. "Go get the keys to unlock this door." Inside, the phone tumbled to the ground with the screen facing up. The screen was still lit as Corey's texts arrived continuously. Aubrey's chest heaved in anger. A while later, she picked up her phone and ignored the cracked screen to type a reply. "What do you want?" "Corey," I said, "I want money. If you can offer me a satisfying reward, I can disappear. Otherwise..." Aubrey gripped her phone with such force that she nearly cracked the screen. "What a bastard! Even if I pay him the money as requested, he will never delete those photos. He will keep these photos and ask me for more money when he is in need of money." Aubrey knew she would be inviting trouble if she were to pay him the money as requested. Having fallen for his trick previously, she refused to repeat her mistake for the second time. It's time to eliminate Corey. Corey had no idea what Aubrey was thinking about, for his mind was preoccupied with the thoughts of money. He continued sending her messages of threat. All of a sudden, Aubrey messaged, "Okay. How much do you want? I'll give you anything." Corey curled his lips in satisfaction and answered, "You should have said that earlier. We've been working for a while now. Why did we have to fight for such a long time?" Aubrey replied impatiently, "Cut the nonsense. How much do you want?" Corey mulled over it for a while before messaging, "50 million. I'm sure this is an amount you can afford, Ms. Pearson." Ori's debt was worth 20 million. As for the remaining 30 million, he intended to use it for another gamble to see if he could rise from the ashes. If that failed, he could still use the photos to get more money from Aubrey. Corey felt that his plan was perfect. Meanwhile, Aubrey was enraged when she saw the number. 50 million? Why not just tell me that he wants the entire Pearson Group instead? Does he really think he'll be able to get 50 million with just a snap of my fingers? The amount Corey asked made Aubrey even more certain about killing him. She asked, "Where are you?" "I'm going to meet you in person for the exchange. This time, you have to delete the photos while I'm watching." Corey soon sent her an address and added, 11 in the morning tomorrow. "I'll be waiting for you to come." Once he sent the message, he skillfully took out the SIM card from his phone and tossed it into the sea before walking away from the coast. Right then, Gina had finally gotten the keys and unlocked the door to Aubrey's room. As she rushed in, she asked, "What happened, oh Brett? What was that earlier?" Right as she said that, she noticed the phone with the shattered screen in Aubrey's hand. Anyone could figure out that Aubrey had thrown the phone. "Did someone say something to you?" Gina asked with concern. Aubrey was livid, so she fumed at Gina as well. "Nothing. I'm very mad right now, so stop talking to me." Gina was startled by her attitude, but at the end of the day, Aubrey was still her daughter. After a moment of recomposing herself, Gina continued to voice her concerns. Aubrey pushed her away and strode toward the door. "Since I'm meeting him tomorrow, I'll have to assign capable men on this so that Corey won't be able to escape." "Aubrey, where are you going?" Gina was worried when she realized Aubrey was leaving without having her meal. Aubrey continued her way out of the mansion without sparing her mother another glance. The next morning, Corey waited for Aubrey to come with the money at the abandoned factory they had previously met at. When it was 11, footsteps echoed in the factory. Hearing them, Corey stood up and peeked around the corner. Aubrey was standing at the entrance by herself with a bank card in her hand, looking around for him. "Corey? Where are you? Come out here. I have to see you delete the photos with my own two eyes." Right as Corey was about to respond to her, he spotted half of someone's body at the back of a pillar behind Aubrey, and that person was even holding a gun. Once he spotted that person, he spotted the rest. There were over dozens of people, excluding him and Aubrey in the factory. As Aubrey walked further into the factory, the people slowly inched closer too. Corey sneered. "Miss Pearson, how dare you pull dirty tricks like these? Have you forgotten what I work as?" Right as he said that, he ran to the window on the second floor and leaped out of it without hesitation. In the next moment, various voices reverberated in the factory. "Over there! Get him!" Corey started his car with steady hands and sped toward the path he had planned out. By the time Aubrey's men ran out of the factory and went back to start their cars, Corey was long gone. Once Corey shook off his tail, he messaged Aubrey while driving. "Corey, our cooperation is over. I'm going to get money from Mr. Farwell now. Good luck, Miss Pearson." With that sent, he switched off his phone. Given how fearful Aubrey was of Lucian, Corey had no doubt she was going to call him fervently. All Corey wanted was money. He would not waste his time playing games with Aubrey. When Aubrey received Corey's message, she cursed at her subordinates as she tried to dial Corey's number again and again. Lucian had already told her that he was going to call off the engagement. If he were to find out what she had done previously, she would be dead meat. Aubrey was gripped with regret. She realized she should have given Corey that 50 million. Alas, Corey seemed to have figured out that Aubrey would regret her decision, as his phone remained switched off the entire time. Her failed attempts stoked the anger in her, and she threw her phone onto the ground. Then, a wave of terror crashed into her. That madman Corey's capable of doing anything for money. He must be on his way to Lucian's place. What do I do now? Aubrey was at a loss. After a while of being rooted to her spot, she stumbled into her car and asked the driver to send her to the Pearson residence. She had to discuss the matter with her parents. The Pearson family would be doomed if Lucian were to find out what she had done. Sure enough, Corey could do anything for the sake of money. He drove straight to the Farwell Group office building, but when he arrived and looked up at the skyscraper, he gulped guiltily. As Aubrey had said, the three of them were in the same boat. Choosing to betray Aubrey was akin to betraying himself. However, he had no other choice. He needed the money. "Without money, those lunatics will kill me. No matter what I do, I'm screwed. I can only take the risk." Corey steeled himself and dialed Lucian's number, something he had taken much effort to find out. Meanwhile, when Lucian heard his private phone ringing and saw the unfamiliar number on the screen, he frowned before picking up the call. "Mr. Farwell, I'm Corey Zathron. Do you still remember me?" came the voice from the other end of the line. Lucian recognized the voice almost instantaneously. The private detective had not been someone important back then, so Lucian had only sent one of his ordinary subordinates to tail the private detective. However, his subordinate ended up losing the detective in days, and Lucian regretted his decision to assign someone normal to him. He was surprised that the private detective had come to him. Corey chuckled dryly and said, "You have a good memory, Mr. Farwell. I'm sure time is precious for you, so I won't beat around the bush. I want some money, but I won't be asking for a free lunch. I have some leads on the things you've been looking into, and I think you might like to hear me out." The look in Lucian's eyes darkened. So this private detective knew something about the kid's bacterial infection. "Okay. How much do you want?" Lucian asked. The guilt in Corey's chest grew. "It's up to you after you hear what I have to say, but it'll be best if you can give me more than 20 million. Corey was certain that he had to have grown nerves of steel overnight. Not only did he help Aubrey hurt Lucian's children, but he was even asking for money from Lucian now. Lucian was silent for a moment. When Lucian finally spoke again, Corey found himself shuddering. "Where are you?" "Let's talk in person," Lucian replied, neither agreeing nor disagreeing with it. Lucian took it with a neutral look. Corey did not intend to hide anything from Lucian. What he had given to Lucian was the camera he had used when he was working on Aubrey's case. Not only was there the evidence in it, but there were also the photos Aubrey had asked him to take of Roxanne. After handing the camera to Lucian, Corey began waiting fearfully. Lucian went through the photos. The first photo was the photo Corey had deliberately selected for him, the photo where Aubrey was putting the bacteria into the children's drink. The background of the photo was the field where Roxanne had brought the children. Even though there were only a few photos, Lucian could see the ruthlessness and caution in Aubrey's eyes. Lucian narrowed his eyes. He guessed that Aubrey had to have done more things than what these photos showed. He went through the other photos. Most of the photos were photos of Roxanne with Jack, as well as photos of him and Roxanne. Even though Roxanne had accepted him, and even though the two of them were close, he still could not help but feel irritated at the sight of her photos with Jack. Corey had taken the photos deliberately from an angle that would make Roxanne look as though she was being intimate with Jack. The tension built up in the office. Sensing the change in Lucian's mood, Corey craned his neck to look at the photos before explaining, "Mr. Farwell, please don't misunderstand the situation. I was only making it seem as if they were intimate. Ms. Jarvis has always been keeping a safe distance from him." Corey was filled with regret as he said that, and his explanation earned a glare from Lucian. Naturally, he realized that, but it still did not stop him from feeling jealous when he saw the photos. "What was I doing while Roxanne was spending her time with Jack? I was giving her the cold shoulder and mulling over if I should make Aubrey Essie's stepmother." Fury surged through him when he thought about that. Suddenly, he saw a few familiar photos. Lucian froze and lifted his head to look at Corey. "Did you send these photos to Aubrey?" Corey did not know what happened, but he nodded sheepishly. "I sent most of the photos here to Ms. Pearson." The anger twisted even more inside Lucian. The photos were the ones that Sonia had used to kick up a fuss. Back then, Lucian had asked her who sent her the photos, but Sonia had told him they were from an unfamiliar number. Now, it was clear to him that Aubrey's scheming ways went further than what he could see. Mr. Farwell, Corey was frightened by Lucian's cold fury. Mr. Farwell, I was only doing my job. I don't know anything about what happened other than this. Aubrey's a lunatic. She even asked me to kill Ms. Jarvis for her, but why would I do that? But she threatened to tell you that everything was my doing if I didn't do as she said. I had no choice but to flee from her. Lucian snapped. What did you just say? That he even wanted to kill Roxanne? A shudder ran down Corey's spine. Aubrey went mad on the night Ms. Jarvis was hospitalized. He could not finish the sentence from the pure wrath Lucian was exuding. The room plunged into a deathly silence. Right as Corey was about to say something else, Lucian abruptly lifted his hand. In the next second, the camera he had been holding shot past Corey's face and slammed onto the ground. The screen cracked. Corey's knees went weak, and he nearly slid off his chair to kneel before Lucian. An indeterminate time passed, and Corey finally regained his senses. Mr. Farwell, I was wrong. I won't ever dare to do this again. Aubrey forced me. He begged for mercy in a panic and spoke without considering his word choices. I don't want the money. Please let me go. I'll scram. He got up from the chair and wanted to escape the office as soon as possible because that place felt like hell to him due to the gloomy aura emitted by Lucian. Corey didn't want to stay there for a second longer. Stop right there, Lucian uttered just as Corey reached the office door. At the same time, Caden moved and stood at the doorway, blocking Corey's path. Caden gestured at the ladder for him to retrace his steps. Remorse washed over Corey as he was trapped inside the office by Lucian and Caden. If he could turn back time, he wouldn't have met with Lucian no matter what. Realizing there was no longer hope for him to run away, Corey turned around and gazed at Lucian, having only the courage to do so while keeping a safe distance from him. What else can I do for you, Mr. Farwell? Lucian got to his feet from behind the desk and glanced at Corey with a dark look. I can give you the money. Corey was shocked. He couldn't believe his ears. Am I really able to acquire money from Lucian? I'm not dreaming, right? Immediately afterward, Lucian's voice rang again. But not now. Reality slapped Corey across his face. Having worked in that industry for so long, he was already a worldly wise person. He fathomed Lucian had a task for him after Lucian finished his sentence. Moreover, that task wouldn't be simple. However, Corey was left with no alternative. Instead of having Lucian force him to take on the job, he figured he might as well seize that opportunity to get on Lucian's good side by doing him that favor. Corey flashed a subservient smile. Mr. Farwell, how can I be of help? I'll definitely put forth my best effort. Lucian strode past him and looked at Caden, who was standing at the doorway. Bring Mr. Zathrone to the reception room to rest. Caden nodded politely. Corey's heart jumped to his throat when he was on his way to the reception room. The tension even caused him to feel a little breathless. Meanwhile, Aubrey had finally returned to the Pearson residence. Her legs were still a little weak when she got out of the car. She nearly fell to the ground. Aubrey. Inside the mansion, Gina was sitting in the living room in uneasiness. Her facial expression brightened when she saw Aubrey returning. Where did you go? You haven't eaten anything in the past few days and were reluctant to leave your bedroom. When you stepped out of your room, you disappeared without updating us on your whereabouts. Do you know how worried I was about you? Samuel, standing next to Gina, also looked concerned. Just forget about the engagement since it has been called off. Lucian will always remember the kindness your grandfather had shown him, so the Pearson family's status remains, Gina comforted her daughter. Although they were also dissatisfied with the cancellation of the engagement, Gina and Samuel thought their daughter's health was ultimately more important. Mom, Dad, things may be different for the Pearson family soon, Aubrey stammered. The rest of Gina's words stuck in her throat. She turned her head around and exchanged glances with Samuel. Only then did she confirm her ears weren't playing tricks on her. Colors drained from her face again as apprehension filled her eyes. What happened? Why are you saying that all of a sudden? Gina sized up Aubrey's appearance as she spoke. A sense of foreboding crept into Gina's heart. Be honest with us. What have you done? Aubrey's lips trembled uncontrollably. 1-1 messed up. Lucian will never let me off the hook. Mom, Dad, please help me. Only you two can save me now. Gina panicked at the sight of her daughter's demeanor. She instinctively turned to look at Samuel. Samuel remained relatively rational, but he was wearing a grimace. What did you do? Hearing her father's question, Aubrey lowered her gaze guiltily, her eyelids twitching uncontrollably. Even as the situation progressed to that stage, she was still trying to figure out ways to describe her doings with reduced severity. After contemplating for a few moments, she uttered warily, "LOL, contaminated the water Essie drank with bacteria." Samuel's and Gina's faces darkened as soon as they heard that. They had always known Aubrey despised Estella and had been mistreating her. However, since Lucian didn't find out about that, they turned a blind eye to Aubrey's misconduct. Unexpectedly, Aubrey's foolishness knew no boundaries. Noticing the changes in her parents' mood, Aubrey quickly added, "I didn't do that on purpose. I was just trying to teach Roxanne, a lesson. I wanted those tube starts to be infected, but LOL didn't expect Essie's cup to be next to theirs." I got carried away before she could finish her sentence. Samuel slapped her forcefully. "You fool!" Aubrey covered her face, lowered her head, and stayed silent for a long while. Samuel panted heavily. He recollected himself for a few seconds before asking again, "Is that all?" Aubrey's eyes flickered. "I did the same thing to Essie once in the past, but I suppose Lucian doesn't know I am the culprit. He doesn't have any evidence." Samuel bellowed, "Aren't you aware of Lucian's capability? He'll find out all the information he needs once you expose yourself." Aubrey became even more agitated. "What should we do? Lucian cares a lot about Essie. He'll never forgive me if he knows I tried to harm her. Moreover, I even set Roxanne up on multiple occasions. Judging by their current relationship, Lucian will undoubtedly turn my life into a living hell by considering all the horrible things I've done when taking revenge on me." At that thought, she grasped the hem of her mother's clothes hysterically. "Mom, you have to save me. I was wrong." Gina merely felt weak all over. She understood her daughter more than anyone else, so she knew Aubrey must have committed more wrongdoings than she had let on. Still, Aubrey's act of harming Estella alone was sufficient to convince Lucian to unleash his wrath on the Pearson family. Gina gazed at Samuel, hoping he could figure out a solution. "You fool! I can't believe I gave birth to a daughter as senseless as you." Samuel paced around the mansion anxiously. After some time, he finally stopped in his tracks and instructed Gina, "Contact Sonia. We can only rely on her to help speak up for us in front of Lucian." Gina was already deeply shaken up. She merely executed his orders blindly after hearing his words. Right after she took out her phone to dial Sonia's number, Aubrey's phone suddenly rang. The three of them simultaneously shifted their gazes to the ringing phone. Due to the fire at the factory earlier, her phone screen had been cracked into a mess. Nonetheless, they could still see the caller ID displayed on the screen. It was a call from Lucian. Aubrey shuddered when she caught sight of the name. She frantically tossed away the device. "Lucian must be calling me to settle the score. We cannot answer the call. We mustn't. Do you think he'll be out of ways to deal with you if you don't pick up the call?" Samuel roared. Frightened, Aubrey answered the phone with trembling hands. On the other end of the call, Lucian wasn't expecting her to speak, either. He simply uttered coldly, "I'll be waiting for you at the Farwell residence at 2 o'clock in the afternoon." With that, he hung up the phone right away. It was 2 in the afternoon, and there were still 2 more hours to go. Not wanting to waste any more time, Gina gave Sonia a call. The latter answered immediately. "Gina, what is it?" From Sonia's calm voice, it was obvious that she had no clue about what had happened. Despite forcing herself to calm down, Gina couldn't stop her voice from quivering. "Are you free? Aubrey would like to speak to you." Gina's tone puzzled Sonia. "Did something happen? Is it about the engagement?" "Don't worry. I'll talk to Lucian about it." The mention of Lucian's name caused the three Pearsons to feel self-conscious. Finally, Gina steeled herself to reply, "You'll know when you arrive." With that, she ended the call, confident that Sonia would come over. Just as expected, Sonia arrived at the Pearson residence half an hour later. When she saw the three gloomy Pearsons in the living room, Sonia's heart sank. "What happened? Why do you all look as if you're at a funeral?" No sooner had Sonia spoken than Aubrey came over and hugged Sonia's leg. Stunned by the latter's abrupt action, Sonia was about to speak when Aubrey preempted her with a voice brimming with despair. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Farwell. You have to help me. I'll never do it again." Aubrey's words elicited Sonia's sympathy. "Tell me what happened, and I'll see if there's anything I can do." In a choking voice, Aubrey explained, "Remember when I told you about Essie getting an infection from the camping trip Roxanne took her on? I was the one behind it." Sonia's face darkened instantly. "What in the world happened? I didn't do it on purpose. I just wanted to teach Roxanne and her two boys a lesson, but the bacteria somehow got into Essie's cup and infected her." Aubrey shamelessly tried to defend herself. "I really didn't expect it to turn out that way. That's why I didn't dare tell you about." Before she finished, Sonia slapped her across the face. This slap was even harder than the one Samuel had given her earlier. Sonia was outraged to learn that the daughter-in-law she favored had actually harmed her granddaughter. Aubrey's confession had also reminded Sonia of the time when she whacked Estella on the backside. I must have been blind to believe Aubrey when she claimed that she did it for Essie's own good. Mrs. Farwell, dazed by the strike, Aubrey took a few seconds to regain her senses before giving Sonia a hopeless look. Showing no mercy, Sonia shoved Aubrey's hand away. "Shut up! How could you have lied to me all these years and even harmed my granddaughter? Why did it take me so long to realize how vicious you are? Aubrey, I'm really disappointed in you." The Pearsons' faces fell in response to Sonia's reaction. Nonetheless, Gina still held some hope. "Sonia, we have been friends for so many, don't you dare say my name." The aura Sonia exuded was so intimidating that it seemed to suffocate the Pearsons. Right then, Sonia had a sudden realization as she looked down at Aubrey. What about the car accident? Now that she thought about it, there were plenty of reasons for her to be suspicious. Aubrey lowered her head and didn't dare reply. Sensing how rapidly the situation was deteriorating, Gina and Samuel dropped to their knees in desperation. "Mrs. Farwell, please forgive us this one time. I guarantee we'll never show our faces in front of the Farwells. Leave your pleas to Lucian and Essie," Sonia cut her off ruthlessly. When their appeal fell on deaf ears, the Pearsons were filled with despair. Sonia gave them the side eye. "How dare you lie to me all these years? And now, you still have the cheek to beg for my forgiveness." The three of them hung their heads, not daring to utter a single word. After a brief yet deathly silence, Sonia turned to leave. "You guys better pray hard." Samuel finally got back up to his feet a long while later. As he stared at his daughter, who was still kneeling, a pained look flashed across his eyes. "You should leave the country." Aubrey raised her head the moment she heard those words. "That's the only way out." Samuel let out a long sigh. "You can save yourself by leaving, otherwise, we'll lose both you and our wealth." A look of hesitation filled Aubrey's eyes. "Leave the country? Would Lucian really let me off? More importantly, would he even give me the chance?" As concerns filled her mind, Aubrey just couldn't agree to her father's proposal. In the blink of an eye, it was already 1:30. The three of them left home on time. Given that Lucian was already outraged by Aubrey's actions, they wouldn't look repentant if they were to be late. Meanwhile, Roxanne was oblivious to what had happened between the Pearson and Farwell families. She had caught a cold the day before. Archie and Benny had taken the day off from the kindergarten to stay home to accompany her. As always, the children were extremely concerned about her. They made sure that she took her medication and had enough water. Although all Roxanne had was a slight fever, they forbade her from getting out of bed. In the morning, Lucian and Estella had dropped by for a visit and only left when they learned it wasn't serious. Just as Roxanne was about to take a nap so that her boys could also rest, her phone suddenly rang. When she saw that it was Lucian on the line, she answered it, thinking that he was just checking in on her. "Do you feel better now?" Just as expected, Lucian's concerned voice rang out. Roxanne's heart was immediately warmed. "It's just a minor fever. I feel fine. You guys are just reacting." For her sake, the three children had taken leave from school, whereas Lucian had almost dropped whatever he was doing in the office to care for her. In the end, it was Roxanne who convinced him that there was no such need. Lucian sounded solemn over the line. Come to the manor if you can. I'll get Caden to pick you up. Roxanne was stunned by his request. She could sense the gravity of the situation. What happened? She reckoned Lucian wouldn't want her to be out and about unless it was something serious, as she was sick. Lucian furrowed his brows. He didn't know how to break it to her. It's better to talk about it in person. Caden should be arriving any time now. Without asking any further questions, Roxanne agreed, I'll go and get ready. Lucian added, bring Archie and Benny along. Since they were Aubrey's initial targets, she has to apologize to them in person. Even though Roxanne was baffled, she could tell from Lucian's tone that it was something serious. All right. Just as she ended the call, the boys came in with a glass of water. After taking it from their hands and drinking a mouthful, Roxanne said, Mr. Farwell wants me to bring both of you to his place, so go get ready. Mr. Lawson will be picking us up soon. The boys were elated to learn that they would be going over to Lucian's place. They figured their father was worried about their mother and wanted to care for her there. But why does he want Mommy to go over? If he's really worried about her, won't it be easier for him to come here? They emerged from Roxanne's bedroom, puzzled by the arrangement. Before the boys could come to a conclusion, Caden was already knocking on their door. Roxanne, who was ready, went down to get the door. Ms. Jarvis, Mr. Farwell has requested that I take you and the children to the manor, Caden informed cordially. Roxanne nodded in acknowledgement. I know. He called me just now. The children will be down soon, so please bear with us for a moment. As soon as she said that, the boys came running down the stairs. Caden ushered all of them into the car. During the journey, Roxanne couldn't resist asking, do you know why Lucian called us over? Caden shook his head after a momentary hesitation. You'll find out when you're there. Although he was aware of the reason, it would be inappropriate for him to talk about it before his employer did. Roxanne frowned slightly. The curiosity within her began to swell. Caden obviously knows something but refuses to talk. The more secretive Caden was, the more Roxanne found it strange. Archie and Benny were unsettled by the mysterious atmosphere as well. It wasn't until 20 minutes later that the car gradually stopped in front of the Farwell residence. When Caden led the three in, Lucian was already waiting in the living room. Behind him stood a man with exquisite features and an ordinary build. However, the man seemed to appear ill at ease. At the sight of Roxanne, the man greeted her sincerely, How do you do, Ms. Jarvis? Wondering if it was just her imagination, Roxanne could feel as if the man seemed to need her help. She gave Lucian a puzzled look. Who might this be? The moment she made eye contact with Lucian, Roxanne was stunned a second time. The conflicted look she saw in his eyes somehow overwhelmed her. What happened? Why are you? She wanted to ask Lucian why he was looking at her that way. This is Corey Zathrone. He's a private investigator, Lucian interrupted her. Roxanne remained as puzzled as before. She had never heard of that name, but the man clearly knew her. Sensing her confusion, Lucian elaborated, He's been watching you all this while. The revelation caused Roxanne's eyes to glisten in shock. She gave the man another look and felt a sudden chill down her spine. Someone has been following me all this while, and yet I was oblivious to it. Why is he doing this? What did he do while tailing me? Roxanne wanted to probe further. Before she could do so, a small figure suddenly ran down from upstairs. Aunt Roxanne! Archie! Benny! Estella had been looking for her father upon waking up. Little did she expect to find Roxanne and the boys there too. Visibly delighted, she hurried up to them with a childish skip. Roxanne had no choice but to swallow her words before flashing a smile at Estella. Aunt Roxanne, are you feeling better? What brings you here all of a sudden? While giving her a concerned look, Estella tiptoed to try to feel Roxanne's forehead. Roxanne leaned forward so that Estella could reach her. The fever is gone. Only after Estella felt it herself did she relax. Meanwhile, while watching the heartwarming scene of Roxanne interacting with the three children, Lucian was enraged by the thought of what he had learned in the afternoon. If it weren't for Aubrey, things would have been like this long ago. After reassuring Estella, Roxanne walked up to Lucian with Archie and Benny. Mr. Farwell, why was this man following Mommy? Archie, the most vigilant of them, had been scrutinizing Corey while Roxanne was chatting with Estella. Hearing that, Roxanne turned to look at Corey with a frown. She had a hunch that the reason Lucian requested their presence was tied to that man. The only thing she couldn't figure out was why he wanted Archie and Benny to be there. She looked at Lucian with concern. Shall we let the children go upstairs to play? Lucian shook his head solemnly. This matter involves them too. The three children deserve Aubrey's apology the most. Hearing that, Roxanne and the children were taken aback. They're just children. What could have happened for Lucian to put on such a grave look on his face? Right then, something struck her. She turned to Lucian and asked hesitantly, "Is it have a seat and wait?" Lucian gestured for them to sit. Roxanne had no choice but to save her questions for later. The children sat beside Lucian but not before saving the seat next to him for Roxanne. Despite that, Roxanne still chose a seat where the children were between Lucian and her. Not knowing what was going to happen, she tried to avoid looking too high profile. Once seated, Roxanne began to contemplate on the matter. The only thing I can think of that relates to the three of them is Essie getting an infection during the camping trip. Is the result of the investigations out? Roxanne then recalled Lucian's introduction of Corey. Since he has been following me, does that mean he saw what happened that day? With that possibility in mind, Roxanne gave Corey an anxious look. Is the culprit who I think it is? Aubrey? Just as she pulled the children into her embrace and wanted to ask Lucian about it, a commotion was heard at the door. Everyone turned to see what was going on and was greeted by the sight of Catalina ushering Sonia in. From the sullen look on Sonia's face, it was clear that she had flown into a rage not too long ago. And the sight of Roxanne and her boys only caused Sonia's scowl to deepen. Essie, come to Grandma. She looked in Estella's direction. Her eyes were filled with guilt. Estella pursed her lips and tightened her grip on Roxanne's sleeves, refusing to go over. Sonia's face contorted when she saw Estella's reaction. She looked as though she was about to lose her temper. However, at the thought of something, Sonia calmed herself down again. She gave Roxanne a look of displeasure and didn't force Estella in the end. Instead, she turned her attention to her son. I just came back from the Pearson residence. They should be here any minute. Roxanne's expression changed when she heard that. Just as expected, the Pearsons must be the ones behind it. At the same moment, Lucian gave his mother an inquisitive look. Sonia's brows furrowed. They were pleading for mercy from me, but I ignored them and told them to speak to you instead. With that, she took her seat in the armchair beside Lucian. For harming her granddaughter and lying to her, Sonia wanted to witness with her own eyes how the Pearsons would explain themselves in front of her son. Moreover, she wanted to make sure Aubrey apologized to Estella. At 2 sharp, the miserable-looking Pearsons arrived at the manor entrance. Although Samuel's appearance was still considered acceptable, Gina and Aubrey looked as if someone had died. After they cried in a panic the entire journey, their hair had become nothing but a mess. Go in and apologize. Samuel shot his daughter a glare, and Aubrey nodded without hesitation. After all, they had no other choice given the current situation. The three of them entered the mansion with their hearts hanging in their throats. The moment she stepped in, Aubrey saw Roxanne sitting with Lucian. It went without saying that the 3 children had filled the space between both of them. An insidious glint flashed across Aubrey's eyes. Even at her closest to Lucian, she had never shared a couch with him. He would always be seated in a single-seater. And now, right before her eyes, they looked exactly like a family. As rage began to boil within her, Aubrey caught a glimpse of Corey from the corner of her eye. In that instant, she felt weak and almost dropped to her knees. Prior to her entrance, she had still hoped that Lucian had discovered something else instead. However, the sight of Corey dampened those hopes and drowned her in despair. Lucian, what's with the crowd? Samuel had wanted to pretend as if nothing had happened but held his tongue upon noticing Sonia's presence. Gina, on the other hand, felt her limbs go cold and looked as if she was about to faint at any moment. Pearson, I'm sure you recognize the man behind me. Lucian's frosty voice rang out. At his cue, Corey came forward and stood in front of Aubrey. The Pearsons turned pale upon noticing that Lucian had changed the way he addressed Aubrey. Ms. Pearson. Lucian must have decided to sever ties with our family. Speak. I don't remember you to be deaf. Lucian had kept his temper in check due to the presence of the children. Nevertheless, his icy tone still struck fear into the hearts of others. Even the children moved toward Roxanne when they, too, sensed his anger. Roxanne responded by giving their heads a reassuring stroke before turning her attention to Aubrey, who was wearing a frosty expression. Ever since I returned to the country, this woman has been trying to harm me time and again. I don't mind her attacking the research institute or me, but she has crossed the line by choosing to hurt my children. In fact, she has done so more than once. Roxanne was filled with the urge to pay Aubrey back for what she had done to the children. Meanwhile, Aubrey couldn't help but tremble under Lucian's gaze. A long while passed before she finally found her voice. I do. Lucian narrowed his eyes in displeasure. Is that all? His question sent a shiver down her spine. She might have had the courage to confess her misdeeds to Sonia, but it didn't mean that she dared to do the same in front of Lucian, who would never let her off. In her desperation, Aubrey threw herself at Lucian. Lucian, listen to me. Everything I did was for your sake. I love you. You can't treat me this way. Before she could even get close, Caden grabbed her and shoved her back toward Gina's side. He didn't hold back his strength after tolerating her all this while. Stung by the pain in her arm and the dejection welling up inside her, Aubrey burst into tears. Since you have trouble recalling, I'll let Mr. Zathron remind you of them. All Lucian felt when he saw her tears was disgust. If he gets anything wrong, you're welcome to correct him. With that, he gave Corey a look to signal for him to begin. Acknowledging the cue, Corey cleared his throat and spoke. Ms. Pearson hired me to keep an eye on Ms. Jarvis. He had barely begun when Aubrey lunged at him suddenly. Shut up! I don't know you. You're a madman. I don't know what you're talking about. Go to hell! Even though her outburst caught him off guard, the physical strength between them was just too great. The moment he regained his senses, Corey easily pushed her away from him. Stop raving like a lunatic, you shrew! Upon crashing to the ground, Aubrey snarled, You'll suffer divine retribution for this. Do you think the Farwells will let you off just because you snitched on me? Corey paid Aubrey no heed as he turned to face Lucian and Roxanne with an ingratiating look. Ms. Jarvis, I'm sorry, but I was just doing my job. It was Aubrey who forced me to do it. But other than taking a few pictures, I definitely didn't do anything to harm you. As she watched Aubrey go wild, a look of realization flashed across Roxanne's eyes. This was the first time she had seen her lose her composure, for the latter had always appeared aloof. Soon, a look of conviction formed in Roxanne's eyes. For harming the children, Aubrey deserves to be punished. She threw Corey a cold glance. What did you capture with your camera? Corey was surprised by Roxanne's quick reaction. He said, When you took the children camping, I saw Aubrey put something into their cups. Also, I was the one who took all those pictures of you and Mr. Damaris on her instructions. One by one, Corey listed out Aubrey's misdeeds while Aubrey unleashed a constant tirade on him. When he finally finished, Aubrey shouted, I didn't. That wasn't my intention. Lucian, you have to believe me. Corey looked at her disdainfully. When he first worked with her, she had always put on airs and didn't show him any respect. And here I was, thinking that she was someone capable. But in the end, she still has to grovel at Lucian's feet, begging for forgiveness. Having had enough of the pathetic Aubrey, Corey ruthlessly put the final nail in her coffin. I have evidence of everything she did in my camera. As for the pictures with Mr. Damaris, I have more pictures of the scene from a different angle. They clearly show that Ms. Jarvis wasn't sharing an intimate moment with him at all. When Corey's final words rolled off his tongue, Aubrey's voice gradually faded away. All that could be heard from her were sobs of dejection. What do you have to say for yourself? Lucian's eyes were brimming with contempt. He was simply disgusted by the sight of Aubrey. When she raised her head and saw him sitting with Roxanne, Aubrey could feel madness take over her mind. I didn't do anything. Roxanne framed me. Since I've lost everything, I'm going to drag her down with me. Aubrey's eyes were burning with rage as she stared at Roxanne, who was seated on the couch. Roxanne, you! Why are you doing this to me? I'm the one Lucian loved in the first place. It's all your fault. He left me because you keep pestering him. You deserve to die. I won't forgive you. Who do you think you are, taking Lucian away from me like this? He's going to see your true colors one day. You're just a piece of trash who's been bedded by thousands of men. Aubrey pointed at Roxanne. Her hysterical screams echoed in the mansion hall. I won't let you talk about mommy like that. You evil woman. I hate you. I hate you so much. Estella suddenly lost control of her emotions and burst into tears. As she cried, she picked up the things around her and threw them at Aubrey. Roxanne hurriedly pulled Estella into her embrace. She was racked with guilt. I should have brought the children upstairs. This kind of situation is too overwhelming for them, especially Essie. She's already emotionally unstable to begin with. Estella cried so hard that she could barely breathe properly. I don't want the evil lady here. She scolds me and even pinches my arms and legs. Mommy. I want mommy. All Roxanne could feel was her heart aching. She could not even process what Estella was saying. Calm down, Essie. I'm here. Don't cry. I'll help you chase the evil lady away. Lucian's and Sonia's expressions changed when they heard Estella's words. Samuel cast Aubrey a cold glare. Aubrey had lost her mind and was still lashing out verbally. Samuel shifted his gaze from Lucian to Sonia before he slapped Aubrey across the face. Shut up, you! This time, Samuel did not go easy on her, which left Aubrey dizzy from the slap. It took her some time to return to her senses. Still, she continued screaming, How could you hit me? You're on that S side, too, aren't you? Samuel landed another slap on her cheek, which sounded loud and clear. After 2 slaps, Aubrey's cheeks had swelled. Samuel turned around to apologize to Lucian and Sonia. I'm terribly sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Farwell. Aubrey has made a terrible mistake. I'll teach her a lesson when I get home. Please be merciful and not hold a grudge against her. Sonia was trembling with anger when she found out how Aubrey had been secretly treating her granddaughter. Likewise, a dark look appeared on Lucian's face. We're not the ones you should be apologizing to. Hearing that, Samuel turned to Roxanne and the children. When Samuel was about to part his lips, Lucian's voice rang out again. You're not the one who made the mistake. What are you apologizing for? The coldness in his tone was palpable. Samuel froze when he heard that. Several seconds later, he turned around and snapped at Ori, Apologize to Ms. Jarvis and the children now. Aubrey's pupils darted around out of fear and madness. Eventually, the madness got the better of her. She got to her feet stumblingly, murmuring, Fine. I'll apologize. I'll apologize now. Thinking she was actually going to apologize, Samuel let her walk in front of him without stopping her. In the next second, Aubrey suddenly dashed forward, holding the ashtray Estella had thrown at her earlier. Roxanne, you! Go to hell! Aubrey looked like an utter maniac. At that moment, even the boys who were usually brave were scared senseless, and they watched Aubrey charge at them in fear. Estella's cries became sharper, and her eyes were filled with terror as she gripped Roxanne's shoulder tightly. Roxanne instinctively pulled Estella into her embrace and turned around, wanting to take the attack on the latter's behalf. However, only a muffled thud was heard. The pain that was supposed to follow did not happen. It took Roxanne several seconds before she slowly lifted her head to glance in the direction where Aubrey was coming from. To Roxanne's surprise, Aubrey's hand that held the ashtray earlier was held by Lucian while the ashtray had dropped to the ground. Various emotions could be seen flashing across Aubrey's face. First, there was the mad look on Aubrey's face for the urge to kill Roxanne. Another was her terror for Lucian. "You crazy woman!" Lucian's grip on Aubrey's wrist was so tight that it could almost crush her bones. It was only then that Aubrey snapped back to her senses. Suppressing the pain in her wrist, she apologized frantically, I don't know what's wrong with me. Forgive me, Lucian." Lucian, before she could even finish, Lucian shoved her away. Aubrey stumbled a few steps back and slumped to the ground pathetically. "I swear I won't do it again. Please forgive me," she pleaded, ignoring the pain in her body. "Forgive you? So you can get another chance to attack the people I care about? Aubrey Pearson, you deserve to die for everything you did." Lucian's voice was horrifyingly cold. Shuddering, Aubrey backed away with the help of her hands. At the same time, her gaze fell on Sonia. "Mrs. Farwell, please help me." Aubrey knew how much Sonia liked her. Seeing Aubrey still had the guts to beg her for help, Sonia rose to her feet and barked, "I don't know a vicious woman like you." She cast her granddaughter a worried look before turning back to Aubrey. "I always thought Essie didn't like you because you two didn't spend enough time together. Never did I imagine you to have treated her that way behind our backs. You're unbelievable, Aubrey." The thought of how much Estella had suffered over the years made Sonia's heart ache. "How dare this still beg me for mercy? How shameless! From today onward, the marriage contract between the Farwell and Pearson families is off. After all, I've already repaid old Mr. Pearson's favor long ago," announced Lucian. He then cast the Pearsons an icy glance. "In the future, Pearson Group is an enemy of Farwell Group." Samuel could not bear it any longer. He marched forward, wanting to grab Lucian's arm. This time, Caden was quick to react as he blocked Samuel's path. Given no choice, Samuel stood in his spot and looked at Lucian earnestly. "Please don't do this, Lucian. Back then, my father he wanted to try bringing up the favor his father had done for Lucian. Old Mr. Pearson's favor had exhausted long ago when Aubrey went looking for Roxanne for trouble. I said this before. I won't let her off the hook if she dares to harass my person again." Lucian cast Samuel a hostile glare. Samuel's heart sank, and his eyes dimmed with despair. Lucian turned around to look at Estella, who was still crying, and Roxanne, who was patiently comforting the little girl. The sight only spiked his anger more. The nerve of her to hurt the people I care about. Turning around, he marched over to Aubrey and glanced at her condescendingly. "Since you won't apologize to them, I've got no choice but to resolve this with my methods." His methods? The Pearsons exchanged nervous glances as a terrible fear grew in their hearts. With a grim voice, Lucian called for Caden. Just as he was about to give his orders, Roxanne's voice sounded behind him. "Lucian, forget about it." Still hugging Estella tightly, Roxanne put a lid on her hatred. "Let the police handle this. I have the report of the bacteria she used on the children. The dosage is lethal for kids. She'll be spending the rest of her life in prison for attempted murder. Roxanne could not stop her hatred from festering at the thought of Aubrey almost murdering the children. Even so, she could still think rationally. Aubrey's actions were outrageous, but it was not worth dirtying Lucian's hands to punish her. Lucian frowned and fell silent for a moment before ordering Caden, "Contact the lawyer and tell him to send Ms. Pearson to where she belongs as soon as possible." Caden could not be happier to hear that. "All right." When Aubrey heard Roxanne's words, her eyes darted from left to right. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison? No. I don't want that. I won't let you off even if I die. Just wait. I'll make you join me in hell." Aubrey had a malicious expression on her face as she stared at Roxanne, looking like a devil who had just escaped from the pits of hell. Unfazed, Roxanne merely covered Archie's and Benny's eyes. The fury in Lucian's heart grew more intense. Samuel hurried over to Aubrey and finally restrained her after exerting much strength. After that, he shot Gina a look, implying that the latter needed to help him out. Snapping out of it, Gina scurried over to cover Aubrey's mouth. However, Aubrey seemed to have lost her mind as she bit Gina's hand. Regardless, the latter dared not remove her hand. "It's our fault for not educating her well. Please, Mr. and Mrs. Farwell. Aubrey's still young. We promise to keep a strict eye on her and not let her get near Ms. Jarvis and the kids. Please give her a chance." Samuel pleaded earnestly. Sonia had known them for a long time and even watched Aubrey grow up. She had only wanted to teach Aubrey a lesson and cut ties with their family over that matter. Never did she expect the punishment to become so severe. Sonia's heart began to waver as she gazed at the pathetic-looking trio. However, Lucian did not give her the chance to speak. Narrowing his eyes, he asked, "Should I escort all three of you out?" Samuel did not dare to say anything else. In the end, he and Gina carried Aubrey out and fled the scene. When the Pearsons finally left, the mansion plunged into silence. All that could be heard were Estella's sobs. Feeling heartbroken, Roxanne patted Estella on the back and said gently, "Don't be scared, Essie. The evil lady's gone. Don't cry, okay?" It was at that moment Archie and Benny finally snapped out of their daze. They hopped off the couch and surrounded Roxanne and Estella. "Don't cry, Essie. Mr. Farwell has given that evil lady a proper lesson. She won't show up ever again. There won't be anyone who'll bully you again. Mommy, Benny, and I will protect you from now on." The boys took turns assuring her. When Estella heard that Aubrey was gone, she stopped sobbing and peeked out from under Roxanne's arms. Suddenly, Sonia approached and regarded her from above. "Come here, Essie. Let me hug you." Estella, who had yet to calm down, almost burst into tears at the sight of Sonia. Seeing that, Roxanne quickly hugged Estella tightly. She then stood up to look at Sonia. "Mrs. Farwell, please don't agitate her. Essie's still emotionally unstable." At the same time, Lucian walked over with a frown. He thought his mother had finally gotten a clear view of the situation after witnessing the way she had treated Aubrey earlier. To his surprise, Sonia had gone looking for Roxanne for trouble after chasing Aubrey away. I'm just worried about my granddaughter. How is this agitating her emotions? It had been an emotional day for Sonia. She failed to keep her emotions in check, which made her sound displeased when she uttered those words. When she finished saying that, she reached out to pull Estella out of Roxanne's arms. Come here, Essie. Let me see if there are any injuries on your body. Panicking, Estella crawled up Roxanne's shoulders. Ah! I want mommy. I don't want grandma. No. Unfortunately, the way Estella addressed Roxanne only made Sonia scowl more. Don't simply address her that way. She's not your mommy. Estella only continued crying, oblivious to the words Sonia was yelling. Lucian, on the other hand, heard everything clearly. He stood beside Roxanne and the children with a hostile expression. Mom, what are you trying to do to Essie when she's already in such a state? Are Aubrey's words not enough to make you reflect on yourself? Sonia was taken aback by her son's words. A long moment passed before she said awkwardly, I'm just worried about Essie. Rubbing his temples, Lucian suppressed his anger and said, Do you really? If you really cared about her, why would you keep pushing her to Aubrey? For the past 5 years, Estella had suffered a lot because of Sonia's favor for Aubrey. His words eluded Sonia of words. She looked at Estella with remorse, saying, I'm sorry, Essie. I just really want to make it up to you. Then she glowered at Roxanne. I can avoid touching Essie for the time being, but Roxanne has to leave the Farwell residence. Nothing good has happened to our family ever since she appeared. I bet she'll only be satisfied when she wreaks havoc in our family. Essie wouldn't have suffered so much if Roxanne hadn't ditched her without a word back then. When Estella heard her grandmother talking about Roxanne that way, tears streamed down her face again. I want mommy. Don't leave, mommy. Estella was sobbing so hard that Roxanne did not notice the way she was addressing her. Even if Roxanne did, she would still follow Estella's wishes. Roxanne was moved yet pained to see Estella being so protective of her. However, the same could not be said for Sonia, who was livid. Don't you dare think you can actually be Lucian's wife just because Essie called you her mommy. There are tons of people out there who dream about being in this position. Aubrey's gone now, but there'll soon be another one. In any case, it'll never be you. Even so, Roxanne ignored her and coaxed Estella softly. Just then, Lucian stepped forward and stood between Roxanne and Sonia, growling, Only she can be my wife. If you don't agree, I'll gladly give up my position as the CEO of Farwell Group. Both Sonia and Roxanne were dumbfounded by his words. Sonia knew how much Lucian liked Roxanne, but she had never imagined he would give up Farwell Group for Roxanne. Roxanne, too, was stupefied. She had never thought that Lucian would go to such lengths for her. After a prolonged moment of silence, Sonia said with a gloomy look on her face, You're going to go that far for her? Hey? Fine. I'll leave so I won't get in the way of your happy little family. She turned around and was about to leave when Lucian called out to her, You should stay in the manor for today. I have something to announce once Essie feels better. Sonia paused in her tracks and shot him a confused glance. What is it? This is the first time Lucian has asked me to stay over at the manor, so whatever it is he wants to announce must be very important. Wait a minute. He said he was fine with giving up his position as CEO of Farwell Group earlier. Is that what he's going to announce? This is all Roxanne's fault. Lucian wouldn't have made such irrational decisions if it weren't for her. Sonia turned toward Roxanne and shot her a vicious glare. Roxanne simply ignored her gaze and continued comforting Estella. You'd better think this through, Lucian. Ask yourself if that woman is worth you giving up Farwell Group. Sonia warned Lucian with a furious look in her eyes. Lucian could tell from Sonia's behavior that she was starting to get scared. Just because I have something to announce doesn't necessarily mean it's about Farwell Group, so you have nothing to worry about. Sonia paused and looked suspiciously at them for a few seconds before going up the stairs. Realizing that Aubrey and Sonia were gone from the living room, Estella slowly stopped sobbing and looked up at Roxanne with tears in her eyes. Roxanne felt her heart ache when she met Estella's eyes. Don't worry, Essie. I'll be sure to protect you. Essie must have suffered a lot while she was under Aubrey's care. Just thinking about what she said earlier makes me hate her even more. Essie couldn't even talk at the time. How could she do that to her? She was snapped out of her train of thought when Lucian whispered in her ear, I'm sorry. Roxanne looked up at him in confusion. Lucian was plagued with guilt when he looked at them and recalled what Estella had said while she was crying earlier. He walked up to Estella and flashed her an apologetic look. I'm sorry I didn't take good care of you. Estella simply sniffled and shook her head profusely in response. You've disliked Aubrey for the past 6 years. Can't believe I never realized the actual reason behind it, Lucian continued with a look of regret in his eyes. Estella reached out and caressed his cheek as she said, It's not your fault, Daddy. She's the bad person here. She's the worst. I had wanted to tell Daddy about it through text before, but Miss Pearson lied to me and said Daddy would never kick her out. She even threatened to hit me even harder if I tried to tell Daddy, so I had no choice but to put up with her. Now I realize she was lying all along. Not only would Daddy kick her out, but he would also punish her severely. Lucian gave Estella a kiss on the back of her hand before shifting his gaze toward Roxanne. I'm sorry, he said apologetically. Roxanne frowned in confusion, as she didn't know what he was apologizing to her for. Even so, she couldn't help but comfort him when she saw how guilty he felt. You are indeed at fault for placing Essie in Aubrey's care for 6 years. However, the fact that Essie likes you so much indicates that you provide her with a strong sense of security, so you must have been a good father. Whatever happened is in the past. You've already punished Aubrey for what she did, so that's enough to make up for your mistakes. Noticing that Lucian still had a look of guilt in his eyes, Roxanne pursed her lips and held his hand as she added, Nothing like that will happen to Essie ever again. We'll do our best to protect Essie too. Archie and Benny chimed in. The look in Lucian's eyes softened up a little after he heard that, much to Roxanne's relief. Maybe I should bring Essie over to my place for the day. She has been through quite a lot today, she suggested. Roxanne could tell that Estella was still unable to accept Sonia, so she was worried that Lucian's decision to have Sonia stay over at the manor would affect Estella's emotional state. Estella wrapped her arms tightly around Roxanne's neck upon hearing that as she wanted to stay with her. However, Lucian did not approve of Roxanne's suggestion. Take her to the bedroom and get some rest. Essie won't pay too much attention to anything else with you around. Roxanne was a little hesitant to do so, but Estella nodded profusely in agreement. I'm not afraid of anyone as long as Aunt Roxanne is with me. Roxanne couldn't bring herself to say no when she saw the expectant look in Estella's eyes. Eventually, she gave in and brought the 3 kids over to Estella's bedroom. Lucian, Caden, and Corey were the only ones remaining in the living room. Having witnessed Lucian unleash his wrath upon Aubrey earlier, Corey was exceptionally cautious when approaching Lucian. Mmr Farwell, whatever warmth Lucian had in his eyes had disappeared when he turned around and asked, "How much do you want?" "30 million will suffice," Corey replied nervously while holding up 3 fingers. Lucian turned around and instructed Caden, "Go ahead and pay him 300,000. I do not want to hear anything about him in Chania starting tomorrow." Corey was frozen in shock when he heard that. "Wait a minute. Did I hear that right? 300,000? That's 100 times lesser than what I asked for. Paying 30 million is a piece of cake for someone as wealthy as Lucian, so why isn't he willing to pay me the full amount?" Caden then stuffed a check worth 300,000 into Corey's coat pocket. "You nearly helped Aubrey get rid of Ms. Estella, so be grateful that you're even getting paid at all. In fact, you should consider yourself lucky that Mr. Farwell didn't have you killed. Now, take this money and get lost." Having snapped out of his dazed state, Corey shifted his gaze between the check and Lucian's icy cold expression. Please forgive me, Mr. Farwell. I have a huge gambling debt. They'll kill me if I don't pay up. Please help me." As though he didn't hear a word Corey said, Lucian simply stared silently at him with no emotion whatsoever. Caden grabbed Corey by the arm and began dragging him toward the door. "Shut up, or I'll take this check back as well." Corey struggled with all of his might, but he couldn't break free from Caden's vice-like grip. Caden opened the front door and tossed him out like a bag of trash. Corey's face went completely pale as he watched the mansion door close in front of him. "This is all Aubrey's fault. I wouldn't be in this position if it weren't for her. I've taken care of him, Mr. Farwell. The guys from Marsingville will be informed of his location tomorrow," Caden said as he made his way over to Lucian. Lucian simply nodded without saying anything. Caden glanced at the back garden as he continued cautiously, "Mr. Farwell, about the decorations in the back garden." The look on Lucian's face changed slightly when he heard Caden mention the back garden. After a brief pause, he turned around and made his way toward the back garden. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.